All right, let's get straight into it. April 12th, 2025, Miami. UFC 314. Donald Trump walks in, and from everything we're reading, it wasn't just an entrance. It was, well, a real moment.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it.
Think less polite clapping, more like a sustained roar, you know, USA chants everywhere.
Right.
We've got a bunch of sources here that really try to unpack why this wasn't just like a celebrity dropping by.
No, it seems much more calculated than that.
Exactly. It feels like a strategic move, and we want to dive deep into what this tells us about, you know, his connection with certain supporters and his wider political game plan.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how these seemingly off-the-cuff public appearances are often, well, anything but spontaneous.
Totally.
They really give us a lot of data, if you look closely, for understanding political communication and sort of brand management today.
Right.
So we're looking beyond just the event itself, trying to get at the strategy, the messages being pushed.
Absolutely. So let's paint the picture. The Casillas Center, apparently the atmosphere was just electric.
Yeah.
And then Trump walks in. Our sources describe this like wave of approval hitting him, the whole place buzzing with those USA chants, and the soundtrack, Kid Rock's American Bad A, just blasting.
Oh, yeah.
That choice.
You almost can't overstate how deliberate that feels. It's not exactly subtle, is it, in terms of building a specific image?
Not subtle at all. It's about hitting that core base, right? Tapping right into that feeling, that aggressive nationalism, that populism that clearly clicks with them.
And the sources we have really hammer that point home. And it's visual, too. Reports mention him with outstretched hands, family nearby. It all just feels very staged, very intentional.
Precisely. And that song choice, you know, in that context with that crowd, it's more than just bravado.
Right.
It triggers a whole set of cultural associations, defiance, American exceptionalism, all very carefully managed.
And the visuals, the hands, the family, it might seem personal, but it also plays into this narrative of a leader connected to his people, almost like a patriarch figure for that movement.
Building that emotional tie.
Yeah, an emotional bond that kind of goes beyond typical politics.
And it wasn't just Trump there. The people with him ringside. Wow,
So,
quite the list.
oh, yeah, the entourage.
Our sources list, quite a mix. Elon Musk, Dana White, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State.
And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right?
Yeah.
As HHS Secretary in this scenario. Plus Kash Patel as FBI Director.
Exactly. And then you also had Senator Ted Cruz, Congressman Byron Donalds there, too. It's this real convergence of, like, tech, sports, politics.
Yeah.
Even pulling someone from a different political dynasty. What's the takeaway there?
Well, that curated group, it just screams influence, doesn't it?
It does.
It shows the breadth of Trump's reach, the different coalitions he can still, you know, bring together.
Musk is interesting there.
Musk's presence is definitely notable. It signals this ongoing link, or maybe just aligned interests, with a huge figure in tech and innovation. That's a group not always seen in his corner.
Good point.
And having Cruz and Donalds, especially mentioning the Florida governor endorsement for Donald, that really underlines the strategic political stuff. Nurturing alliances in key states.
Like Florida.
Exactly. And they're a very visual way to show he's still a major player across all these different arenas.
It really paints a picture of his network. Okay, let's shift to the venue itself, UFC. Trump's liked MMA for ages, right?
Yeah, long-standing interest. We've seen him with Dana White plenty of times, even after the 2024 election night.
So what's the draw? Why UFC specifically? Why is that maybe more symbolically powerful than, say, showing up at WWE again?
I think the key thing is the unscripted nature of UFC.
Ah, okay.
The raw physicality, the fact that there's a clear winner and loser, undeniable.
Right, unlike pro wrestling.
Exactly. The sources we looked at really contrast it with the predetermined stories and the showmanship of wrestling. UFC represents real confrontation, a clear show of strength, dominance.
And that fits his image.
Perfectly. It aligns so strongly with Trump's whole public persona. The tough guy, the no-nonsense leader who doesn't back down from a fight, whether it's political or, symbolically in the octagon.
So being there just reinforces that brand.
In a way that the more performative world of wrestling just wouldn't quite.
That makes total sense. It's that feeling of raw strength, decisive action that seems core to his appeal. And this UFC 314 appearance just cranks that volume up. The sources are pretty clear. It was about reaffirming that brand forcefulness, strength, which ties right into his talk on immigration, crime, American power.
Exactly. It's almost a mirror, isn't it? The combative nature of MMA reflecting his own combative political style.
Yeah.
And if you look at his strategy through that lens, you see this pattern, right? He tends to favor these high-energy, visually impactful events.
Over, say, a policy speech.
Way over a policy
Yeah.
speech. Choosing UFC instead of a detailed policy forum sends a really clear message about how he prefers to connect with his base.
Using celebrity, spectacle.
Leveraging that celebrity status and the power of spectacle to get people fired up, maybe in a way traditional campaigning doesn't always manage.
And it clearly works, at least in terms of generating that immediate buzz. The reports mention the sustained cheers, the chants, again, that energy in the arena.
It's palpable.
These events almost become rallies in themselves. It just shows how powerful that kind of spectacle can be for galvanizing voters, especially maybe those who feel a bit disconnected from, the usual political stuff.
It's about creating that shared feeling, that emotional moment. And that brings up a pretty big point about how political engagement might be changing.
How so?
Well, we could be seeing this shift where these really intense emotional connections, these big public displays of unity, often boosted by celebrity and visuals, become incredibly influential.
More influential than policy details.
Perhaps. Maybe more influential in shaping who people support and getting them motivated than, say, a detailed platform or a logical debate.
Interesting. Now, think about the timing, a potential second term possibly being considered. This appearance feels extra strategic.
Definitely.
The sources call it a clear statement that he's still politically relevant, still a force.
Right. Not fading away.
And him mingling with guys like Shaquille O'Neal, Joe Rogan, it just keeps highlighting this blend of entertainment and political clout in his method.
He operates in that space very comfortably.
Yeah, where celebrity and political power just seem completely tangled up.
And what's really interesting there is how that strategy hits a certain demographic. People who are politically aware, sure, but also really plugged into pop culture.
Right.
Having these huge names from sports or entertainment can add a kind of cultural cool, maybe broaden his appeal beyond just the usual political lines.
Keeps him visible, too.
Absolutely. It's a way to maintain that high public profile, that sense of momentum outside of a formal campaign cycle.
And the location, Miami. That feels very deliberate.
Oh, definitely. Florida's crucial.
The sources make a big deal of his win in Miami-Dade County in 2024. Historic, right? First Republican president to do that in decades.
Huge deal. So him being at UFC 314, just spending time in South Florida, it looks like a very calculated effort to keep that connection strong.
Especially with the Byron Donalds endorsement for governor coming up.
Exactly. If you zoom out to the electoral map, Florida, and specifically that diverse South Florida electorate, is just critical for his whole strategy.
His ability to connect there.
Yeah, his success connecting with, say, Cuban-American voters, working-class voters in that area. That was key in 2024.
So showing up again reinforces that.
Right. These repeated high-profile stops in Miami, which is such a hotspot for Latino voters, it strongly suggests a long game. Cementing Florida's role in his future plans, building that lasting tie with those key groups.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it really sounds like this UFC night was much more than just a fun outing for him.
Far from it.
The sources we've gone through paint it as this carefully built event. It was about projecting power, using his celebrity, and making some pretty smart political moves.
Yeah, all layered together.
You had the intense crowd reaction, that symbolic entourage, and the way the whole UFC vibe just reinforces his established brand strength, confrontation, populism.
Exactly. I think the main takeaway here is just how intentional it all was.
Right.
Nothing seemed accidental. Every piece, the music, the guest list, the location, it all looks designed to boost his narrative, stir up that emotional connection with his base.
As he figures out his next steps.
Yeah, as he navigates whatever comes next, potentially including another run.
So what's the bottom line here? Well, it definitely seems like those lines between entertainment and politics are getting blurrier and blurrier.
They really are.
And Donald Trump seems particularly skilled at working within that new landscape. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How is this growing overlap between, showbiz and politics fundamentally changing the way leaders connect with people?
And what are the long-term effects?
Right. What does it mean for how we all engage with civic life down the road? Definitely something to chew on after this deep dive.